Folks, it's Dennis from Aspen Thicket. I'm just going to do a little follow-up with you. Those of you folks that watch my videos know that it seems like with these younger dogs, I plant the pigeons in the same location quite often. And I do because of the type of dog I'm dealing with. Now, if you have a very young dog that has a ton of natural pointing ability in it, you know, points like the second bird you put down for it after it flushes and chases one, that's the type of dog that you need to mix the stuff up on and kind of plant the birds in the different locations and things like that. And actually don't even overdo it with birds because the dog understands what it's doing in the first place. But when you have dogs that may not have a strong ability to point as some of their counterparts, and I'm seeing a lot of this over the last couple of years, is we're getting dogs in here that just don't have a lot of point in them per se. One of the things that I like to do is I will plant the birds in the same location for the dog, especially if we're doing launcher drills, because that way the dog can actually anticipate that a bird is going to be there. And it's going to tell you one or two things about the dog. Number one, it's going to tell you if he has any pointing ability whatsoever, especially if they get to the point where they're aware that a bird might be in that location and they start to slow down and creep or flash point. That's going to tell you that they have a little bit of ability. If they get to the point with that bird in the same location, they just continually run to it and flush it and chase it, then you're going to have a little bit of a more challenge. That dog's not going to have natural pointing ability. It's just going to want to bump and chase everything. And this really is a situation with some dogs. You can say, well, all dogs are bred to point. The guy that I bought the dog from told me that his dogs point. He might have been lying to you, right? You never know. Or you could have got the dud of the bunch, or things go like that. But it kind of goes back to making sure you get dogs from really good kennels that have a lot of references, that have sold dogs that people have hunted over and they can vouch for, because not all the dogs are generally the same. Not all the kennels are equal. And that's not to say average Joes aren't breeding very, very good dogs, but you know, I'm just telling you that I'm seeing a trend that dogs are coming in, they don't have a lot of natural pointing ability. Now, some dogs mature a little bit later, and that's okay. They can come here and get a little foundation work, and you know, if they're not pointing when they leave, then you just send them out, hunt them on some wild birds. Hopefully they staunch themselves up. You get into a lot of birds. If they don't, then you got to bring them back later on. But when you have a young dog, you can't just take a young dog and put it on a check cord and start tapping on it to get it to stand still, right? Because what's going to happen, you're going to end up possibly making that dog blink birds because you're going to put too much pressure on it, which is why we use launchers and soft planted birds here, because we don't want to put that type of pressure on the dog. And so for anyone who's asking, you know, I think some of the videos that we use this location a lot right here. I'm currently using this one for 2 dogs that I have in, and then I'm using one down the road a little bit for another dog that I have in. It's because those dogs don't really have a lot of strong pointing instinct in them, and I'm trying to evaluate, you know, where they're at in terms of, are we going to be able to milk that instinct out of them at all, which that sucks, because you'd like to see them naturally point right from the get-go, but sometimes they don't do that. So this is one of the little tricks that I do, is plant it in the same location so there's an anticipation of that bird, and it helps me judge the dog's ability on that. I'm going to go ahead and get back to some of this dog work. Have a good evening. Thanks for tuning in.